I turned the handle 3 times before I understood. The door was locked. Not just locked. Bolted from inside. My breath came out in clouds against the November cold as I knocked harder. It was past midnight. I'd worked a double shift at the diner washing dishes to save money for college. My fingers were raw and smelled like bleach. A light flicked on upstairs. My father's face appeared at the window, backlit and impossible to read. I waved, confused. He just stared down at me. Then his mouth moved. Even through the glass, I heard every word clearly. "You don't live here anymore." "What?" I shouted. "Dad, it's freezing out here." He turned away from the window. The light went dark. I stood there hammering on the door for another 20 minutes. My stepmother Diane peeked through the curtains once, smiled that thin smile of hers, and disappeared. Blake, my stepbrother, never even looked. Nobody came. Nobody explained. I was 16 years old, and I'd just been erased. That night, I slept behind the gas station 2 blocks away, pressed against the dumpster's warm metal side, my jacket pulled tight around me. My whole body shook, not from cold, from the truth starting to settle in. Morning light felt like an insult. I walked back to the house, each step heavy with hope and dread. Maybe he'd been drinking. Maybe it was a mistake. I knocked again, softer this time, trying to show I wasn't angry, just hurt. Diane opened the door exactly 3 inches. 4 black trash bags sat on the porch between us. "Your things," she said. Her voice was flat, practiced. "Walter wants you gone by noon." "Where am I supposed to go?" My voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. "Not our problem anymore." She started to close the door. "Can I at least talk to him?" He said everything he needed to say last night. The door clicked shut. The deadbolt slid home with a sound I'll never forget, like a period at the end of a sentence. Final. I opened the first bag. My clothes still folded, school notebooks, the picture of my mom that used to sit on my dresser. Someone had packed them carefully, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't rage. This was planned. Blake watched from his bedroom window, earbuds in, completely unbothered. I picked up the bags and walked away. I didn't look back. Not once. Looking back meant hoping someone would call me home. Nobody did. The youth shelter on Porter Street smelled like disinfectant and defeated dreams. 40 beds crammed into a space meant for 20. The intake counselor, a tired woman named Miss Perry, barely looked at me while typing. "Parents kicked you out?" she asked. "Yeah." "Drugs, alcohol, pregnancy?" "No, nothing like that." She glanced up then, confused. "So why'd they—" "Never mind. Bed number 17. Keep your valuables on you. Breakfast at 6, lights out at 9. The shelter wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't safe either. Guys twice my age with stories that made mine look like a bad dream you could wake up from. I kept my head down, my mouth shut, and my bags under my pillow. Third night there, a kid named Paulo told me about day labor pickup near the industrial park. "Cash same day," he said. "No questions." That's when it clicked. I wasn't waiting for my father to come get me. I wasn't waiting for anything. If I wanted out of this place, I had to build my own ladder. The next morning, I was at the pickup spot before dawn, work gloves stuffed in my back pocket, ready to do whatever it took. The garage on 8th Street hired me under the table. $40 for 10 hours of sweeping floors, changing oil, hauling tires. My back screamed. My hands blistered. I didn't care. It was mine. Money I earned. Nobody could take it from me. I folded those 410s into my sock that night and walked the 6 blocks back to the shelter feeling like I'd conquered something. 3 blocks from Porter Street, 2 guys stepped out from an alley. "Wallet," the taller one said. "Not a question." "I don't have." He shoved me hard into the brick wall. Stars exploded across my vision. They took my socks, my shoes, the $40 I'd bled for. They left me sitting on the cold pavement, shoeless, broke, and so tired I wanted to cry. But crying felt like giving up, so I just sat there until I could stand again. When I limped back to the garage the next morning to explain why I couldn't work without shoes, the owner, a stocky guy named Marcus with marine tattoos up both arms, looked at me for a long time. "You sleep in the back office," he finally said. "I got a cot." "I can't pay you," I managed. "Didn't ask you to." Marcus didn't talk much, but when he did, every word counted. He taught me engines the way some men teach religion, with reverence and high standards. I learned fast because I had to. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was survival. 3 weeks in, I was changing a transmission when I heard the phone ring in the office. Marcus answered it, then went very still. His voice dropped low, the way it did when he was angry. "Lady, I don't care who you married. The kid works hard. He shows up. That's all I need to know." Silence. "Then, you tell Walter if he's got a problem, he can come say it to my face. Otherwise, lose this number." He hung up. Didn't mention it. But later, when I asked if everything was okay, he just handed me a root beer from the mini fridge. "Your stepmother called," he said. "Wanted to warn me you're trouble." My stomach dropped. "I can explain." "Don't need to. I was kicked out at 15, slept in cars, ate from dumpsters. You know what saved me?" He tapped his chest. "Showing up anyway. You're showing up. That's all the explanation I need." That night on my cot in the back, I cried for the first time since the door locked. Not from sadness, from relief. Someone finally saw me. I went to church the following Sunday, not because I believed anymore, but because I needed to see my father face to face, to ask why, to hear him say it out loud. He stood near the coffee table after service, shaking hands, playing the good man. Diane beside him, pristine in her pale blue dress. When he saw me walking toward him, his face went hard. "You need to leave," he said quietly. "I just want to understand. You're not my son anymore." Louder now. People turned. "I gave you everything, a roof, food, and you threw it back in my face." "That's not true." My voice cracked again. "I hated it. I worked. I stayed out of trouble. I don't understand what I did. You're ungrateful, lazy, a burden I won't carry anymore." Mrs. Patterson from the choir nodded along. Mr. Hendricks actually stepped closer to Walter, like I might attack him. Nobody asked my side. Nobody questioned him. They just stared at me like I'd already been judged and found guilty. I walked out before he could say more. But his words followed me, echoed in my head for years. Some days, I almost believed them. On my 18th birthday, I walked into the county clerk's office with $90 saved and a single piece of paper. Name change petition. I wasn't carrying Walter's last name another day. The clerk, an older man with kind eyes, looked over the form. "You sure about this, son?" "Yes, sir." "Family name means something, not this one." He stamped it. Just like that, I became someone new. New name, new start. I walked out feeling lighter, like I'd cut a rope I'd been dragging behind me for years. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at the garage. Certified mail. Marcus handed it to me with a frown. Inside was a legal notice. Walter Brennan versus his former dependent. He was claiming I owed him $1,200 in back rent and utilities from age 16 to 18. I read it 3 times. My hands shook so bad I had to sit down. "He can't do this," I said. "Can he?" Marcus took the letter, read it, and snorted. "He can try. Doesn't mean he'll win." He picked up the phone. "I know a lawyer, works with kids like us. Let's call her." That's when I learned something important. Bullies count on you being too scared or too broke to fight back. I was broke, but I wasn't scared anymore. The legal aid office was cramped and smelled like old coffee, but the lawyer, Miss Alvarez, was sharp as broken glass. She read Walter's claim, then looked at me over her reading glasses. "Did you have a lease?" she asked. "No, ma'am." "Did he file eviction paperwork when he kicked you out?" "No, ma'am. He just locked the door." "So he illegally evicted a minor, provided no notice, and now wants compensation for housing he denied you access to." She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We're going to enjoy this." She taught me about tenant rights, about how the law protects people, even from their own parents, about documentation and evidence, and how to build a case that couldn't be ignored. For the first time since that November night, I felt something shift inside. Not just anger, not just hurt, power. The kind that comes from knowing the rules and how to use them. "You've got a strong case," Miss Alvarez said, closing the folder. "He's going to lose, badly." I floated back to the garage that day. Marcus saw my face and grinned. "Told you?" was all he said, but it was enough. The courthouse was smaller than I expected. Walter showed up in his good suit, Diane beside him, both wearing expressions of righteous certainty. They thought this was already won. The judge, a woman in her 50s who looked like she'd heard every lie twice, listened to Walter's lawyer drone on about parental rights and financial responsibility. Then Ms. Alvarez stood up. She was calm, methodical. She presented my documented timeline, the locked door, the illegal eviction, the lack of any written agreement. She showed my school records proving I was a minor living at home legally. She quoted tenant law like poetry. Walter's lawyer objected twice. The judge overruled both times, looking increasingly annoyed. When it was over, the judge didn't even deliberate. Case dismissed, with prejudice. She looked directly at Walter. Sir, you cannot evict a minor from their legal residence without cause or process, then demand payment for housing you denied them. This court finds your claim frivolous. Next case. Walter's face went purple. Diane grabbed his arm before he could speak. They left without looking at me. I walked out of that courtroom different. Not because I won, though that felt incredible, but because I'd learned something crucial. The world had rules, and when you knew them, you could fight back. I enrolled in night classes at the community college, business administration. It seemed practical, useful. Marcus let me adjust my garage hours to make it work. Mornings I changed oil. Evenings I studied accounting and management. Late nights I collapsed on my cot and dreamed in spreadsheets. For 3 years I kept my head down and built something. No friends, no distractions. Just work and school, and this quiet, burning determination to become someone Walter could never dismiss. One Tuesday afternoon, Blake showed up at the garage. Older now, softer around the middle, wearing expensive sneakers I knew he couldn't afford. Hey, he said, like we were old friends. Heard you worked here. I kept wiping down the workbench. What do you want? Look, things are tight at home. Dad's business isn't doing great. I was wondering if you could spot me $200, just until... No. Come on, man. We're family. I finally looked at him. Really looked. He had our father's eyes. That same entitled confusion when the world didn't give him what he wanted. We stopped being family when you watched them throw me out and did nothing. I was just a kid, so was I. Get out. He left angry, muttering about how I'd changed. He was right. I had changed. I'd learned that family is what you build, not what you're born into. I found my mother's grave by accident. I'd taken a maintenance job at Riverside Cemetery for extra cash, and while mowing one Saturday, I saw the name. Claire Hartley, my mother's maiden name. Died 6 years before I was born. Wait, no, that wasn't right. She'd left when I was 3. That's what Walter always said. Your mother abandoned you. I checked the dates again. She died when I was 3. Didn't leave, died. My hands went numb. I drove straight to the public library and pulled every record I could find. Divorce filings, court documents, custody hearings. The truth assembled itself slowly, horribly. She'd fought for me, filed for divorce when I was 2 because of Walter's escalating verbal abuse and control. She'd wanted full custody. The judge had been sympathetic, but ruled joint custody. 6 months later, she died in a car accident. Walter got everything, including me. In the basement archive, I found a box labeled Hartley Estate. Inside were letters. 23 letters my mother had written to me before she died. Birthday letters. Letters about her hopes for me. Letters telling me I was loved. Walter had kept them, hidden them. Let me believe she abandoned me when she'd been fighting to save me. I sat on that library floor and understood. Walter didn't just lock me out. He'd been erasing me my whole life. At 26, I landed a position with Garrison Property Management. Entry-level maintenance tech, but it was a real company. Benefits. Career path. Within 2 years, I'd worked my way up to site supervisor. By 30, regional manager. I learned the business from the ground up, literally. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, then contracts, negotiations, asset management. Marcus came to my promotion dinner, proud as any father. You made something from nothing, he said, raising his beer. That takes guts. What it took was refusal. Refusal to be what Walter said I was. Refusal to believe his version of my worth. At 34, the company promoted me to operations director and assigned me a new territory, my hometown. I hadn't been back in 18 years. The thought of those streets, those buildings, that church, it made my stomach turn. But I took the assignment, because running away meant he still had power over me, and I was done giving him power. The first week back, I mapped every property we managed. Rental units, commercial spaces, foreclosure listings, professional, detached, just doing my job. Then I saw an address on the delinquency report that made my heart stop. 1247 Oakmont Drive, Walter's house. 4 months behind on payments. Foreclosure proceedings scheduled. I sat in my truck outside that house for an hour, staring at the door that had locked me out. And I smiled. Running into old classmates was stranger than I expected. Most didn't recognize me. I'd filled out, cut my hair short, traded the scared 16-year-old look for something harder, sharper. At the grocery store, Tommy Mills from homeroom spotted my name tag. "Wait, you? I thought you ran away to California or something." "Nope, been working. Your dad said you got into drugs, dropped out. We all figured." "He lied," I said simply. "About a lot of things." Word spread fast in small towns. People started looking at me differently, asking questions. Mrs. Patterson, the choir lady who'd nodded along when Walter disowned me, actually approached me at the hardware store. "I heard you're doing well," she said carefully. "I am. Your father, he's going through a difficult time." "Is he?" It wasn't a question. She flinched at my tone. I didn't care. These people had chosen their truth 18 years ago. They didn't get to rewrite it now. The day I saw Walter was pure accident. Grocery store parking lot. He was loading bags into a beat-up sedan, moving slowly, looking 20 years older than he should. Diane sat in the passenger seat, visibly frail. Our eyes met across the lot. I waited for something. Anger, satisfaction, pain. I felt nothing, just empty recognition, like seeing a stranger who happened to share my past. I drove away without a word. The bank notice hit Walter's mailbox on a Tuesday. I know because foreclosures are public record, and I made it my business to track that file. 90 days to vacate, property to be sold at auction. At the weekly ops meeting, my boss Harriet pulled up the address. "This one's been in default 8 months. Owner's unresponsive. We need someone to coordinate the transition." She looked around the table. "Any volunteers?" Every eye turned to me. They knew it was my territory. Protocol said I should take it. "I'll handle it," I said. Voice steady, professional, betraying nothing. Harriet nodded. "Good. Start the eviction paperwork. I want this clean and by the book. No complications." Blake's name was on the title too, apparently. Joint ownership with Walter. But Blake had been in county lockup for 3 months on a DUI charge. Diane had died that winter. Cancer, I'd heard through the small-town gossip network. It was just Walter now. Alone in a house he couldn't afford, facing the system he'd once used so casually against others. I drove past the house that night. One light on upstairs, the porch sagging, paint peeling. Everything about it screamed defeat. I didn't feel bad. I felt patient. Like I'd been waiting 18 years for this exact moment, and now that it was here, I could afford to watch it unfold slowly. Carefully. Perfectly. The Monday morning meeting started routine. Coffee, status updates, property assessments. Then Harriet projected the foreclosure list onto the screen. Third address down, 1247 Oakmont Drive. "This one's interesting," she said. "Owner filed 3 appeals, all denied. He's claiming hardship, but his payment history shows willful negligence, not crisis. Classic case of someone who thought rules didn't apply to them." My colleague Jordan whistled. "How long's he been dodging?" 14 months. Around the table, heads shook. In our business, 14 months of non-payment wasn't hardship, it was theft. "Who's primary on this?" Harriet asked. "Me," I said. "I've already reviewed the file. Everything's in order. Eviction notice goes out Friday." Nobody questioned it. Nobody knew. To them, 1247 Oakmont was just another address. To me, it was the place I'd learned that home was conditional, that love could be locked out with a deadbolt and a cold stare. After the meeting, I sat in my office and opened the file one more time. Walter's signature on the mortgage. His employment history, spotty at best. His excuses to the bank, elaborate, entitled desperate. I initialed the eviction order and put it in the outbox. Somewhere in that house, Walter would receive it in 3 days. He'd realized then that the game was over, that someone was coming for what he owed. He just didn't know yet that someone was me. I handled the eviction exactly by protocol. No shortcuts, no sabotage, no personal vendetta bleeding into professional responsibility. I sent the notices, filed the paperwork, coordinated with the sheriff's office. Everything clean, everything legal. That was the beauty of it. I didn't need revenge. The system, the same system he'd tried to weaponize against me years ago, would do it for me. All I had to do was my job. The case moved through the courts like water finding level. Walter filed an appeal. It was denied, improper documentation. He requested a hearing. The judge reviewed his 14 months of non-payment and granted the eviction. 30 days to vacate. I kept my distance. Professional, detached. This wasn't personal anymore. This was just Tuesday. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. This is the Garrison Property Management Office, right? The voice was rough, aged, familiar. My hand tightened on the phone. Yes, sir. How can I help you? I need to speak to someone about 1247 Oakmont. There's been a mistake. I've lived there 30 years. I've got nowhere else to go. I could have said anything. Could have told him who I was. Could have made him understand. Instead, I said, Sir, this line is for business inquiries only. You'll need to contact your attorney. I don't have an attorney. I need help. Have a good day, sir. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from control, from finally having the power to end a conversation first. The knock came on a Saturday evening. 3 sharp raps, insistent and desperate. I was making dinner, pasta, nothing special, when I heard it. Through the peephole, I saw him, Walter, thinner than in the parking lot, grayer, shoulders slumped under a coat that had seen better years. For a moment, I considered not answering, just letting him stand there the way he'd let me stand in the cold 18 years ago. But I needed to see his face, needed to hear what he'd come to say. I opened the door, didn't invite him in, just stood in the doorway blocking entry. His eyes widened. Recognition hit slowly, then all at once. You, he whispered. Me. You're the one, the property company. I work there, yes. He stared like he was seeing a ghost. Maybe he was. The ghost of the kid he'd thrown away, now standing in a doorway of his own, clean and employed and unmoved. You turned out okay, he finally said. Like it surprised him, like he'd expected me to fail. I need help. The house, they're taking the house. Blake's in jail. Diane's gone. I've got nowhere. That's unfortunate, I said. You're my son. It's your duty to... You locked me out. The words came out quiet, sharp. Remember? His face went red. I gave you everything before that. 18 years of food and shelter and then you threw me away like trash. Duty ended when you locked that door. You fired me from being your son. Remember? I closed the door, locked it, and went back to my pasta. He knocked again the next morning, and the morning after that. Each time, I didn't answer. The Ring camera I'd installed showed him standing there, sometimes for 10 minutes, just staring at the door. The 5th day, he left a note, rambling, desperate, explaining that Blake had gambled away his savings, that Diane's medical bills had destroyed them, that he'd made mistakes, but he was family, and family helped each other. Not one word about what he'd done to me, not one apology. Just need. Just the assumption that blood meant obligation. I threw the note away. Word got around town fast. The pastor from that same church called me. Your father's struggling. As a Christian man, shouldn't you? Did you call him 18 years ago? I interrupted. When he locked out a 16-year-old in November? When he publicly disowned me? Did you ask him about Christian duty then? Silence. That's what I thought. Have a good day, Pastor. Mrs. Patterson tried next. Then old teachers, then neighbors. The same people who'd watched it happen, who'd nodded along with Walter's lies, now asking me to be the bigger person. I told them all the same thing. I survived what he did to me. That's more than he ever gave me a chance to do. I don't owe him my survival. Some understood, most didn't. I stopped caring which was which. The eviction went through on schedule. Sheriff's deputies supervised as a moving crew hauled Walter's belongings to a storage unit he couldn't afford. I didn't attend. Didn't need to. The case file on my desk told me everything. Property cleared, locks changed, ready for auction. I got a call from Harriet. Nice work on Oakmont. Clean process, no drama. That's how it should be done. Just following protocol, I said. Still, some of these cases get messy. People begging, fighting. You kept it professional. If she only knew. That weekend, I drove past the house one last time before the auction. Empty windows, foreclosure sign. The porch where my trash bags had sat looked smaller now, less significant. Just wood and paint, nothing more. I'd spent years imagining this moment, thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt tired, like I'd been carrying something heavy for 18 years and finally set it down. A car pulled up. Walter got out, moving slowly. He looked at the house, then at my truck. Our eyes met. I didn't speed away, didn't hide. I just sat there, window down, letting him see exactly who I'd become, the kid he'd thrown away, the man he'd failed to destroy. Then I drove away, not running, not hiding, just done. The house sold 3 weeks later to a young couple expecting their first child. I handled the paperwork myself. The news article started small, local interest piece in the Sunday edition. From homeless teen to property manager, one man's journey. A journalist named Angela Morrison had been digging into my background after hearing rumors. She'd found the court records, the shelter logs, the story. She called me for an interview. I almost said no. Then I thought about every kid who'd been thrown away like I was, who thought they were worthless because someone who should have loved them said so. If I do this, I told her, I want the truth. All of it. The article ran 2 pages, detailed my eviction at 16, Walter's lies, the locked door, my years working my way up from nothing, and yes, the foreclosure. The professional distance I'd maintained. The town split immediately. Half the comments praised me for surviving, for not being vengeful, just professional. The other half called me cold, said I should have helped my father despite everything. I didn't read the comments after the first day, but other people did, and they started reaching out. Former classmates, shelter workers, people I'd forgotten. Each one had a story about Walter. His cruelty, his control, the ways he'd hurt people and hidden it behind respectability. Tommy Mills called me. My dad said Walter tried to cheat him on a car sale years ago, said he was always a liar. I'm sorry I believed his version of you. It's not your fault, I said, and I meant it. Walter's greatest skill was making people believe his lies. The truth was coming out. Finally, completely. The phone call came from a lawyer I didn't recognize. Mr. Hartley, this is Dennis Kowalski. I represent Walter Brennan. He'd like to contest the foreclosure. Claims procedural errors, conflicts of interest. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Tell Mr. Brennan I worked that case by the book. Every form, every deadline, every legal requirement. If he wants to contest it, he's welcome to try. He's claiming you sabotaged. Then he's lying. Again. Pull the file. Check my work. I've got nothing to hide. Kowalski paused. You're his son, aren't you? Not for 18 years. Still, the optics. The optics are that a property management company handled a routine foreclosure. That's all. If Walter wants to make it personal, that's on him. My work speaks for itself. He hung up. 2 days later, Walter filed a formal complaint with the court, claiming bias, emotional damage, wrongful eviction. I met with Garrison's legal team, brought every document, every time-stamped email, every properly filed form. Our lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Chen, reviewed it all. This is pristine, she said, impressed. He doesn't have a case, not even close. Good, I said. Let's make sure the judge sees that. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. I wasn't worried. Truth was on my side, for once, finally, completely. The courtroom was the same one where I'd won my case at 18. Different judge, but the same smell of wood polish and old books. Walter sat at the plaintiff's table, Kowalski beside him, both looking confident. They shouldn't have been. The judge, Judge Harrison, a no-nonsense man in his 60s, reviewed the complaint with visible skepticism. Mr. Brennan, you're claiming your son sabotaged your foreclosure? Yes, Your Honor. He held a grudge from... I've read the background. What I haven't seen is evidence of procedural misconduct. He looked at Kowalski. Counselor? Kowalski shuffled papers. The conflict of interest alone was disclosed to Garrison Property Management, who determined Mr. Hartley could handle the case professionally. Miss Chen interrupted smoothly. Which he did. Every form properly filed, every deadline met, every communication documented. The foreclosure proceeded exactly as it should have. She laid out the timeline, the 14 months of non-payment, the multiple warnings, the appeals Walter filed and lost, the eviction order, legal and justified. Judge Harrison listened, expression darkening. Finally, he looked at Walter. Sir, you were given every opportunity to address this debt. You chose not to. The fact that your son happened to work for the company that eventually foreclosed is unfortunate, but not illegal. He followed the law. You didn't. Case dismissed. But, Your Honor, dismissed. The gavel came down hard. And Mr. Brennan, I'd suggest you focus on your current situation rather than trying to blame others for consequences you created. Walter's face went purple. The same rage I'd seen when I was 16. But now it just looked small. Desperate. I walked out without looking back. The house at 1247 Oakmont stood empty for 2 weeks before the new owners moved in. I'd assigned the final walkthrough to a colleague, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see it one last time. To stand in the spaces that had haunted me for 18 years and prove they were just rooms, just walls. The front door swung open easily. No resistance, no locked deadbolt keeping me out. Inside, everything was gone. Furniture, pictures, the dining room table where I'd eaten silent dinners while Walter criticized everything I did. The living room where Diane had smiled when she handed me those trash bags. Empty, neutral, waiting for new memories. I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom. The walls were different, repainted, holes patched, but the window was the same. I'd looked out that window 1,000 times, wondering what freedom looked like. Now I knew. In the corner, near the heating vent, I noticed something. A loose grate. I knelt down, pulled it free. Inside was a small metal box, dusty and forgotten. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph. Me, maybe 4 years old, sitting on my mother's lap. Her smile was huge. Genuine, full of love. On the back, in her handwriting, "My beautiful boy, always." I sat on the floor of that empty room and held that picture like it was made of glass. All those years, she'd loved me. Walter had hidden that, had tried to erase her, erase us, but he'd failed. I was still here, still her beautiful boy, still worthy of that smile. I took the picture and left the house for the last time. I found the shelter on Porter Street the next week. It had been renovated, new paint, better beds, actual security, but it was the same building where I'd learned to survive. The director, a young guy named Marcus, different Marcus, but the coincidence made me smile, met me in his office. I explained who I was, what I wanted to do. "I'd like to set up a fund," I said, "for kids aging out of the system. Job training, housing deposits, books, whatever they need to get started." His eyes went wide. That's incredibly generous. "I know what it's like. I want to make sure they have a chance I almost didn't get." We worked out the details. I'd contribute monthly, enough to help 3 or 4 kids a year really get on their feet. Not charity, investment. Before I left, I wrote one more check. "Can you make sure Walter Brennan gets this? He's staying here, I think." Marcus nodded, confused. The check was for $200, the same amount Blake had asked me for. The memo line read, "For food, not forgiveness." I also included a letter. Short, honest. "Walter, I survived. I built a life. I became someone despite what you did, not because of it. You tried to erase me and failed. I'm not writing to forgive you. You don't deserve that. I'm writing so you understand, I won. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing the boy you threw away became the man you needed. That's your punishment. Living with what you lost. Your former son." I dropped it off and drove away. Final, complete, done. 5 years later, I stood in my living room, my house, my name on the deed, my life built from nothing, and heard a knock on the door. Different knock this time. Hesitant, young. I opened it to find a kid, maybe 17, holding a duffel bag and a paper with my address scrawled on it. Marcus from the shelter stood behind him. "This is Tyler," Marcus said. "He aged out last month. Needs a place to stay while he gets on his feet. Shelter's full." I thought, "Maybe you'd have room?" I looked at Tyler, saw myself at 16, scared, trying to hide it, waiting to be rejected again. "You work?" I asked. "Yes, sir. Fast food, 20 hours a week. School, night classes, GED program." "Drugs? Trouble?" "No, sir." I stepped back, holding the door wide. "Guest room's upstairs, second door on the right. You keep the room clean, follow house rules, and show up to work and school. You can stay as long as you need." Tyler's eyes went wet. "Really? Really? Welcome home." He walked past me, Marcus following with a grateful nod. As I closed the door, unlocked, always unlocked, I thought about Walter, about that November night, about the locked door that taught me what home shouldn't be. Now I know what it should be, a door that opens, a second chance, a place where someone says welcome instead of goodbye. When someone knocks, you answer. That's what fathers are supposed to do. That's what I'd become.